How do you deal with intrusive thoughts? That's what I want to talk about for just a few minutes here, because I want to share a secret to dealing with those negative, anxious, intrusive thoughts that most people don't know. Because if you're like most of us, you're probably going about silencing your negative, mean inner critic in entirely the wrong way. I'm Rachael Sloan. I help anxious people save their marriages by overcoming intrusive thoughts in just 30 days. And I'm about to share with you one of the big secrets to successfully dealing with any kind of intrusive thoughts, the kind about your relationship that drive you crazy and make you anxious, and also the intrusive thoughts about your day-to-day life, the ones where you worry about how you look or whether or not you'll succeed in your job interview. It's all the same, and I promise you, you're probably doing it wrong. But before I tell you the secret to dealing with them correctly, there's a couple things you should know about intrusive thoughts. The first is that everyone has them. I mean it, everyone. Like your mother has them, I have them, your favorite gurus have them, your therapist has them, your husband has them, your wife has them, even your kids have them. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. And talking to yourself doesn't actually make you crazy, it makes you normal, because we all have intrusive thoughts and we all tend to argue with those thoughts. So you might find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to succeed at this. And you might even hear a voice talking to you in the second person that's like, yeah, you're not going to succeed. They're totally going to leave you. You're not good enough for them. And you might argue back and be like, well, yes, I am. Or you'll give in and be like, oh, you're totally right. But you hear how you're having like a you and me and yes and I, and it gets like you're having a real back and forth in your brain. Everyone does that. It's totally normal. Doesn't mean anything bad about you except that you have a human brain. That's all it means. And I also want you to be aware that intrusive thoughts aren't always thoughts. It's not always you talking to yourself saying, you know, I'm not good enough, or he's going to leave me, or you'll never succeed. It's not always a voice. It's not always an actual sentence in your mind. An intrusive thought can come in all forms. It could be an image that keeps coming up in your mind. It could be a gut feeling or an intuition. It could even be a sound that you hear that's a remembered sound. It can even be smells or tastes. Any sense at all can be a thought. Thoughts can take any form of any of your 5 physical senses. So it's not just, most commonly they are like words that you hear in your mind or a sentence you see in your brain, but it's not always the case. It can be something else. It can be an image, a feeling, a sound. Regardless of the form it takes, here's what most people do wrong when it comes to dealing with intrusive thoughts. They do one of 3 things. They fight the thought, they try to ignore it, or they try to run away from it. And you guys, none of this works. It never works to fight your intrusive thoughts, to ignore them, or to run from them. And just think about this for a moment. When you're talking to another person, what happens if they start fighting with you? If they start telling you, oh no, you're totally wrong. We're not going to talk about this because you're totally wrong. Change the subject. What do? Do you just give up and agree? No, right? You fight back. It makes you more defensive, more angry when somebody tells you that you're not right, tries to shut you up, or tries to ignore you. It makes you louder, makes you try harder to get your point across. Well, the same thing is happening in your brain, even though it's just you talking to yourself. There's a reason that those intrusive thoughts are there. They are either trying to help you get something that some part of you thinks you need, or they're trying to help you avoid something negative, something bad happening to you. So those thoughts, even if they seem irrational and certainly unhelpful, which they usually are, there's a reason they're there. So as long as you try to fight with them or ignore them or get away from them, they're going to get louder. They're going to keep following you around because they want your attention. It's just like having an argument with somebody else, right? It doesn't work if they just try to shut you down or tell you you're wrong. You get defensive, you fight back. So what do? You don't want to waste your time, right? All of your time, all of your emotional energy hanging out, spinning in these obsessive, irrational, or negative thought patterns. It's not a place you want to be. So if you can't fight those thoughts, if you can't ignore them, and if you can't run away from them, what do? How do you deal with them? Here is the secret to getting rid of those irrational or just downright intrusive thoughts. The secret is yes and. Let me explain. Anytime you notice an intrusive thought coming up, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to succeed, your first instinct might be to fight it, right? You might be like combative and be like, well, yes, I am, and start listing all the ways you are good enough. Don't do that. You might also be like, no, I know this is just this negative intrusive thought. It's my inner critic. I'm just going to ignore it. Don't do that either. It'll get louder. What you want to do is acknowledge it. Say yes. Yes to that thought. Yes, I'm afraid I'm not good enough. Yes, I'm scared he's going to leave me. Yes, I'm worried that my wife is staying late at work. Yes. Yes totally disarms that intrusive thought. The part of you that's trying to get some important message across, remember, it wants to help you get something or get away from something. That's what those intrusive thoughts are there for. When you say yes, it totally disarms that part of you, right? You agree with it. You acknowledge the thought is there. You're aware of it, and you're agreeing. You're not fighting it. Then you get to add on. You get to now choose intentionally and on purpose a new way of thinking by adding it onto that thought. So you might think, yes, my husband has been staying late at work this week, and he told me he's working on a new project to get a big promotion. So you're kind of shifting it, where before you might want to spiral into all of these fears and worries about what it means and why is he really staying late, and does it mean he's really seeing somebody else, right? All of these kind of ingrained relationship fears that you've practiced a lot, these cycles of intrusive thoughts that you can get stuck on. You disarm it. You agree with it. Yes. Yes, I'm afraid I'm not good enough for them. Yes, fine, that's true. And I'm going to show up in this relationship and do my best anyway. Right? You get to pick the and, you get to pick a new thought. So you're agreeing with the intrusive thought, and you're starting to shift it by choosing intentionally another thought to add on to it without fighting, without ignoring, and without running away from that intrusive thought. It's okay that it's there. That's really important to understand when you're doing this, because we tend to be really scared of these negative thoughts, of these intrusive thoughts. We tend to think that they mean something about us. They mean we're a certain kind of person, or they mean we're overly anxious, or we're too dramatic. Like we put a lot of weight and meaning on them. Not necessary. That thought is just a sentence in your brain. That's all it is. It's just a sentence that popped up from somewhere, got put in there at some point in your life, right? In the last 30, 40, 50 years, that thought got planted in your brain. It popped up, sentence in your mind. Nothing has gone wrong. It doesn't have to mean anything about you. You don't need to fight. You don't need to ignore it. You don't need to escape it. Just let it be there. Yes. Yes, sure. Yes, I feel really needy right now. Yes. And I'm going to reach out to a friend. And I'm going to do some yoga. And I'm going to have a conversation with my partner. Right? Yes, and. This is such a simple practice, but it will totally change the way you interact with your intrusive thoughts. So remember, what most people do doesn't work. Fighting, ignoring, running away from those intrusive thoughts is only going to make them worse. It's going to make it harder for you to break that cycle where, you just get stuck on that train of thought, the ones that keep you up all night and keep you miserable. Don't do it. Don't engage with them in that way. Let them be. Allow them. Yes. Yes, it's true. Yes, even something like, yes, my wife's new assistant is really hot. Sure, whatever. Yes. Don't make it mean anything. Agree with the thought, and then add on a new perspective. Add on a thought you want to start believing. And she chose to be with me because she loves me. Yes, and. I would love to hear how this works for you. I would love for you to share a yes and that you're going to practice in your life. Because let's be honest, you know what your intrusive thoughts are, right? We all have the same ones that pop up for us over and over again. So you can plan ahead of time. You don't have to come up with this in the moment. You can be like, oh yeah, when I'm doubting that my husband loves me, I'm going to agree with that thought. I'm going to think, yes, I'm afraid he might fall in love with someone else. And we had such a romantic dinner the other night. And remember how he looked at me at our wedding. And, right, choose that and that feels good to you, so that you're ready in that moment when that thought comes up. You know what to do. Agree with it and add on the new thought that you want to start practicing, the one you really want to start believing, that makes you feel the way you want to feel in your relationship. So please share in the comments. I would love to hear your yes ands. What are you going to use? Go practice it and come tell me how it works. I'd love to hear your feedback. Again, for those of you joining us a little later, I am Rachael Sloan. I help anxious people save their marriages by overcoming intrusive thoughts for good in just 30 days. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, please go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the bell to turn on notifications, because I'm going to be posting a lot of videos helping you deal with your intrusive and negative thoughts, helping you get rid of that inner critic and cope with your anxiety so you can feel secure and validated and build the kind of marriage, the kind of relationship you really want to have. All right, guys, thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the morning.